invite you to relax and get comfortable. Join me in this discussion of Just Another Theory. Thank you for joining me on Just Another Theory podcast, where you can relax and we talk about true crime. When a mystery is unsolvable, we must ask ourselves why. And the answer to that question is actually pretty simple. Either we don't have enough pieces to the puzzle to complete it, or we have the pieces out of order, which can mean that our timeline is not syncing up correctly. That's when critical thinking becomes very essential to looking outside of the box, starting from square one, erasing your preconceptions that allow you to expand your knowledge into another way to think about something. Every small little town has its own stories, buried lies, and mysteries left unsolved. But there are a few. The name alone brings a moment that catches your breath and stiffens your back. And that one, today, is Delphi, Indiana. Just about 5 years ago, as I record this, Delphi, Indiana was seen as a safe, charming, peaceful, and beautiful place nested in natural beauty of lush, hilly terrain. But the sleepy little town of Delphi, of almost 3,000 souls, slipped into a terrifying nightmare on February 14th, 2017. The only hope of saving the peace is to find the one who brutally murdered the two little innocent girls in the middle of the day in a nature park visited by many people who never heard or saw anything. Witnesses of the crime scene were said to have been in a state of shock for some time. Insert my disclaimer. Here is your trigger warning for those planning to sleep tonight. We are about to enter a place that your mind won't be able to unknow. The graphic details of this wicked crime and the weather are very important. Old-timey truth train coming through. One thing that everybody that knows this case seems to be in agreement on is that it was a bloodbath. The evidence substantial. It's been heard through leaked whispers from locals. The girls' mostly naked bodies were stacked and posed in, let's just say, a position found in the Kama Sutra. Allegedly, Libby took the worst by far, with her insides strewn far and wide, the letter F carved into her abdomen, and her head cut almost clean off her murdered body. Local rumor is Abby survived much longer and managed to crawl several feet with dirt and blood caked under her nail beds. Some say a white sheet was hung eerily in the woods at the crime scene with a giant smiley face written in the girl's blood. Information recently leaked out that the killer or killers kept an item of clothing and a few other items of the girls, possibly as trophies. Libby's older sister, Kelsey German, had said Abby borrowed her hoodie and was wearing it in the last pic on social media, posted minutes before the girls go missing. I say killer or killers, as in more than one, because it's also been reported from good source there were 3 signatures left at the murder scene. With 2 young athletic girls, I feel it's very plausible, and I can't rule out that the killer wasn't alone. The day before this horrific crime, on February 13th, 2017, Kelsey had been the one to drive and drop Libby and Abby to the Monon High Bridge Trail at approximately 1:30 to 1:45 p.m. in Carroll County. She recalls seeing lots of kids from school as she pulled into the parking lot. No surprise, as this was the last of a 4-day vacation from school, and this was unusually warm weather for February in Delphi. The story goes, Abby and Libby made their way to the main attraction, an old, abandoned railroad bridge known as the Monon High Bridge, which was wooden planks spaced unevenly apart and 50 feet high in the air. Only the brave will cross it. At 2:07 p.m., Abby's phone posts a few seconds long video of a man walking steadily, confidently on the bridge, which was released by investigators to the public, as well as a facial sketch rendered from an alleged eyewitness account. Also, a voice recording was also shared, of whom investigators feel belongs to the same individual, now called BG, aka Bridge Guy. It's a very chilling recording of the killer right behind them as Abby's phone records him directing the girls off the well-traveled trail. Call records showed Derek German, Liberty's father, called her at 3:11 p.m. to let them know to start heading back to be picked up, but his call goes unanswered. Derek allegedly pulls into the parking lot at 3:14 p.m. and again calls Libby's phone, but no one picks up. According to Derek, he parks and goes on foot to look for the girls. He alleges as he reaches the intersection where the trail crosses, he stops a man dressed in a flannel shirt and asks him if he has seen two girls up there. The flannel shirt guy says, "No, I did not, but there's a couple up on the bridge." Derek, hearing this, changes his search towards Freedom Bridge and then turns back around and heads back to the intersection and passes flannel shirt guy yet again on his way back. Somehow, between 1:45 and 3:15 p.m., Abby and Libby are nowhere to be found. By 4 p.m., Derek alleges he had searched for the girls of no avail for 45 minutes and decides he needs help and calls his family. Family consists of Grandma Becky and Grandpa Mike Patty, with their adoptive son, Cody Patty, which Libby lives with, along with her dad, Derek, and her sister, Kelsey. Abby's mother, Anna, is reported at work at this time. Family springs into action fearing one or both of the girls may have had an accident or possibly are lost. Grandma Becky calls step-grandpa Mike Patty at work, where, allegedly, he has been on camera at work all day, and he sets route to the Monon Bridge Trail to help find the girls. Grandma Becky notes during one interview that Cody Patty is just arriving home from work and rides with her, and she also phones Kelsey, who claims she has been at her boyfriend's house since dropping the two off, watching movies with his father, as the boyfriend had already left for work. It's my understanding that Kelsey went to work for approximately a half hour, but then, after just those few minutes, leaves to join her family in the search for the girls. In the cold month of February, it gets dark very early, and by 5:20 p.m., Libby's grandma, Becky, calls the police department, and the girls are officially reported missing. From that moment on, the park trail was littered with hundreds of flashlights and groups of searchers scouring the natural terrain and trails, and even walking both sides of Deer Creek, which was swollen with flooding that night due to the abnormal heat of the day melting the snow, causing significant rising of the normal shallow creek. As evening became night, drones with thermal imaging were flown, showing no heat signature of either girl. There are some local searchers that even claim they walked the location the girls were found the next morning and saw nothing. Meeting somewhere in the middle of 11 p.m. and midnight, all searchers gather, and now most regretful decision to call off the search for the night was made. In an interview, Mike Patty recounts that, as everybody else went home, there was still a handful of searchers, and he and they went back out to see if they could find the girls. Mike's own recollection and account is that at 1 a.m., even the few remaining searchers and himself finally call it quits for the night. At this point, I would imagine that Grandma Patty is beside herself, and I would have thought that Mike would have rushed to her side to comfort her until they could begin to search again. But according to Mike, he gets in his vehicle and drives randomly all over town till between 3 and 4 a.m., just looking to see if he sees something out of the ordinary. As the bleak day starts and the search regains its momentum, Mike Patty is very adamant to this day that all family members were separated and placed into designated search groups in order to keep everybody separate and accounted for. However, we know that's not exactly true. Kelsey accounts for her and Cody Patty crossing the Moan and High Bridge together at the time when her sister's shoe is actually found. A short time before the horrific double homicide scene of the girls was discovered by searchers, a very strange thing happened. A man approached the inspector and asked him if it was true that the girls' bodies had been found laying near the water. He claimed that a man named John Weaver had told him this. The detective radioed dispatch and was told that in no way was that true. Negative. Yet within the hour, at approximately noon, on February 14th, that very same day, Valentine's Day of 2017, 14-year-old Liberty German and 13-year-old Abigail Williams' best friends' bodies were located by the searchers laying next to the water. Grandma Patty shared her reaction during an interview. She said when they told her the girls had been found, she felt relief and assumed that they had been found safe. Her disbelief and heartache echoed through the small community of Delphi, as well as the rest of the world. During this same interview, Mike Patty said when he overheard on the radio that the girls had been found, and then he pauses and he says, "I must have heard the location or something. I was in a canoe with a volunteer and on Deer Creek and went directly to the location." Everyone else in the family claims that they all gathered at one central location and had a meeting where it was discussed that the girls were not found. Okay. Yet Mike knew the exact location of the girls' bodies. Would that have even been released?
Easy to hide behind a keyboard and take shots and say it's Mike Patty, he's the worst guy ever. You know, I've been called everything. Trust me. It breaks my wife and my family down to tears, and I tell them, guys, my family down, guys, 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 down.
After 5 long years, we have to ask, is law enforcement any closer to solving this double homicide? Or are they locked in on the wrong motive? Or narrowed their mindset into tunnel vision and have somehow askewed the timeline? There is no way on God's green earth you will ever get me to believe that in a short 90 minutes, Libby and Abby were dropped off at the Mona Trail, made it up to the bridge, crossed the bridge, met up with the BG guy, down the hill, across hill and dell, water, and then had enough time for this murderer to subdue both girls alone in the middle of the daylight in a park full of teenagers that are off for the day from school, and not one person heard a scream? As you can imagine, over the years, every type of vehicle in the area has been investigated. From every broken down vehicle, whether it was on the highway or at the cemetery near Deer Creek, including an abandoned vehicle from around noon till after 5 p.m. at the local CPS building, which happened to be closed. And we have produced no leads, no answers, no resolve. Perhaps it's time to consider an alternate method of transportation, of travel. In the winter in Delphi in February, it would not be normal to be able to travel across Deer Creek with your canoe. However, with the exceptionally warm climate, the snow had melted, causing Deer Creek to swell and rise well above normal. Remember, Mike Patty himself has verified, validated, that is exactly how he made his mode of transportation from in town right to where the girls' bodies were found. Unquestionable is how smart these girls were, proven by Abigail's quick thinking to hit record on her cell phone. With the lack of anybody coming forward to report a scream, a scuffle, anything out of the ordinary, it suggests that Libby or Abby, or both, knew their assailant and trusted the individual and left willingly with them. I don't believe that there was enough time for everything to take place in that hour and a half during the day. And why would a murderer risk being seen in broad daylight by whoever happened to pass by? As we know that the searchers claimed that they walked both sides of Deer Creek, and even some searchers claimed that they went right through the area where the girls' bodies would have been and saw nothing, as well as the thermal imaging did not pick up on any heat signatures of the girls at all. It seems more plausible that that would be the time that the girls were abducted, and maybe not even aware that they were being abducted, depending on if this is someone they're very comfortable with and convinced that they're just going on a unusual chance to ride in the canoe on Deer Creek, right? Because the water's super high. Most law enforcement, as well as myself and many of you, do not believe in coincidence. Family dynamics can be very tricky, and much goes on that no one ever learns about behind closed doors. Just before the girls were murdered, Cody Patty gets out of jail, and rumor has it, allegedly, Libby was going to the police station the very next day. Is it related? The morning of February 13th, the very morning that the girls go missing, Cody Patty made a social media post on Facebook to a guy named Michael. He posted, "It's hard to find that baby of mine. I only nutted in her one time." Michael's response is, "Bro, she just 14 though." Even though Grandma Becky claims that this is just lyrics of a song, the response from Michael was, "Bro, she 14 though." The exact age of Libby German was 14. It happens to be posted at 11:16 a.m. on February 13th, 2017. Was Cody talking about Libby? It would only make sense if the girls were actually abducted and then held and murdered later, that they would have been subdued in some fashion. We're at a pivotal point where we need to ask the question, if the killer is in a remote location with the girls subdued and not having visual contact with the Monon High area, how is he able to determine when the coast is clear to bring the girls back to the area in order for him to continue with his plan? A very simple solution would be that we have the second man, the one that's actually part of the search party. As the last of the search party, other than a few stragglers, ended at 1 a.m., it would seem then we need somebody that has no alibi between 1 and approximately 3:30 a.m. It's been spoken that around 2:30 a.m., screams were indeed heard. The easy solution would be that the killers simply wash off in the creek before they get in their canoe, book it back to their remote location, load the canoe into their truck, and hey, at this point, if you are discovered and you happen to be Mike Patty with Cody Patty, you could simply say you borrowed a canoe and you were looking for the girls. Law enforcement have said they've likely interviewed this person before, that he could be in the very room that they're doing their media broadcasts from, that he's hiding in plain sight, that many think of him as an upstanding citizen, a pillar of the community. They also said that when they're able to prove who did this, there'll be a lot of explaining to do to family as well as friends and the community, as well as the world. This has been just another Theory podcast, and I appreciate you and your time. Make your day count. May justice be served for Liberty German and Abigail Williams. God bless you all. Make your day count. Love ya. To the moon and back.